welcome to Up Your Game with Conversations That Matter. And this is an educational service of Driving IR. I'm Jeri Quinn from Driving IR, and we help businesses grow. And so I'm so happy today to have Sharon Lechter to interview about all of your work and the various people that you've come in contact with in your life. And it's certainly an honor and a privilege. So thank you, Sharon, for being here.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Certainly you have been involved with writing 15 books with Robert Kiyosaki, and certainly involved with Napoleon Hill and his foundation, and certainly done some things on your own. So before we go into the book that we're talking about today, which is Outwitting the Devil, let's talk a little bit about you and all those associations you've had. So why don't you fill us in a little bit on just who is Napoleon Hill and why is his Think and Grow Rich such a successful, powerful product?
Well, thank you. Yeah, Napoleon Hill is really considered the grandfather of personal development and success, because in 1908, Andrew Carnegie charged him with going out and studying success, and Andrew Carnegie was the richest man in the world at the time. And he said, I think that there's a formula. I think that there is a process that all of my successful friends have followed, and I want you to study it. And he says, Napoleon Hill, I want you to do this. It's going to take 20 years of your life, and I'm not going to pay you anything, but I'm going to introduce you to some of the wealthiest people. Will you do it? And Napoleon Hill had 60 seconds to say yes, and luckily he did in that time frame. And he spent literally 20 years, and 25 years later, in 1937, he finally published Think and Grow Rich. And the power of it is that it's not one man's philosophy. It is a thesis of success after interviewing hundreds of successful people and thousands of people who considered themselves failures. We call it learning opportunities. But because of that synthesis of study, when he actually wrote the book, that's the power behind it, because it's not one man's philosophy, but yet the thesis paper of success. And so Napoleon Hill published that in 1937, and the book we're going to talk about today, he actually wrote in 1938, but it's been hidden away for 73 years.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. But when he interviewed people, he didn't just interview successful people, right?
No, he also thousands of people that were not successes, that considered themselves failures, because he wanted to get both sides of the equation. And that's, I think, the journey that he took. He himself had successes and failures in his own life. And I think that's where you get the brilliance within the pages of Think and Grow Rich, because Napoleon Hill is the one who came up originally with the law of attraction in 1919.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah, in 1919 he wrote about it in a magazine article. And then he also coined the concept of the mastermind, surrounding yourself with mentors and with the team. That came from Napoleon Hill's years of study. And he also came up with the concept of pay yourself first. So, of course, many financial planners and financial folks today use that term, banks, pay yourself first, and it originated with Napoleon Hill.
That's fascinating, really fascinating. And you mentioned something to me just a few minutes ago about Roosevelt and his fireside chats. How does that, tell us about that and the impact on history for that.
Well, Napoleon Hill actually got to know President Roosevelt and worked with him during his first term and at the beginning of his second term. And during that time, of course, Roosevelt had his fireside chats, and Napoleon Hill wrote most of the content. I've just learned this recently, and in fact, the term that Roosevelt is known for is "there's nothing to fear but fear itself" was actually written by Napoleon Hill.
That's amazing, truly amazing.
It is, it really is. And of course, it's very pertinent to the book Outwitting the Devil, because it's all about fear.
Yeah.
So
let's get to the book in a minute, but you've done some amazing work with Robert Kiyosaki too. So tell us, what is it like to, write 15 books with Robert Kiyosaki?
Well, the passion came from me. My background is a CPA. My oldest son went off to college, got into credit card debt in 1992. So it was in 1992 that I dedicated my professional life to financial education and financial literacy. In 1996, Robert Kiyosaki, in a pair of cutoff shorts, had a piece of paper with a game kind of sketched on it, and he went to see my husband, who's an intellectual property attorney, to get the game patented. And that was the day my husband called me and said, you should meet this guy. He's got an idea for a game. And so I met him at a first beta test for the game, and I was the only one who got out of the rat race on the game. And so he said, okay, I need to meet with you. And so my background had been in publishing. If you're familiar with kids' books that have the sound strips down the side, I started that industry and grew that, and we did games as well. So I helped him get the game ready for publication, and as part of that, we wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad together because he wanted to charge $200 for the game. And so, a lot of people may be a little hesitant spending $200
especially in the
for a board
1990s,
game.
yeah.
There's Monopoly and there's cash flow. So we wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad literally as a brochure. We never knew it would become the success that it did. We thought we'd have a $15 giveaway, a book that would explain the concept behind the game. And we thought our brand was cash flow. The name of our company was Cash Flow Technologies. And the world told us, no, your brand is Rich Dad. And so Rich Dad, Poor Dad was quickly followed by 2 other books in a trilogy, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, and Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. And then from there, we just kind of exploded because we had 15 books that we wrote together and multiple games and audio products. And it was really... It wasn't because of us. I think it was the right message at the right time. People like you read it, found value, and told their friends. I always ask people that say, I love that book. I say, how did you first hear about it? And usually it's my brother, my mother, my friend. So it really is one of those things. It's truly a success in viral marketing before social media, before what we see today.
It's that word of mouth. I know when I'm working with my clients, I often tell them to read that because it just gives them the contrast of following a profession for a long time or following a way to engineer your career by getting multiple experiences. In fact, I was looking for my copy, so I get you to sign it, and I think my son has it. So,
well, thank you. That's good because that proves my point. As moms giving it to sons, neighbors,
absolutely.
And the whole basis behind the Rich Dad organization when we started was for people to understand that the importance of the difference between assets and liabilities. Most people go through life with one concept. They go get a job. And so they are working and on the treadmill of life, getting a paycheck. And we wanted them to understand that it's not so much what you do for your paycheck that's important. It's what you do with your paycheck and how you keep it. And if you can keep some of that and have it start working for you, then your asset column starts growing.
Sure.
Most people today are their only assets. They have to get out of bed if they're going to make any money. And we want to try and change that paradigm so that people understand the importance of having assets and growing your business. And diversification also. When we have financial planners, they talk about diversification as stocks versus bonds versus REITs. No. True diversification is between business assets, paper assets, under which all those fall, and real estate. And so when one thing happens in a particular market, you're not going to be as impacted if you have everything in one type of asset, you're going to be much more dramatically impacted.
That's great. Now I see you have some other things too. So tell us a little bit what you've done between the time when you were working with Kiyosaki and the publishing of this book this year.
Well, in 2007, we'd been partners for 10 years. Our missions were no longer aligned. Robert wanted to franchise and start selling businesses. And I really still wanted to focus on families, young people, and entrepreneurs with cost-affordable products. And so I left the Rich Dad organization in 2007 and formed my new company, which is called Pay Your Family First. And it was out of that company that I started creating products. And the first one that I did was this entrepreneurial kit called Youthpreneur Biz Kit. And it helps parents and mentors teach their young people how to start a business. And I'm very excited. We just last week learned that it received the 2011 Mom's Gold Choice Award. So it's very exciting.
Yeah.
But what's more exciting is when I get letters from kids saying, I love the product. It helped me get my business up and running because it takes kids through a very simple format. And at the end, all of a sudden, they don't realize it, but they've written their own business plan. And so if you say something to them ahead of time, it's kind of intimidating. And yet you take them through the process. It's very fun and engaging.
I wish it was available. I started my first business when I was 10 years old, and I didn't know what I was doing, that's for sure.
I have many of their parents say, this helped me in my business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're looking at making a grown-up version, too.
Now, you have another game there, too, right?
Yes. Well, as we were going through this, it was really important for me to understand that it's so important to have experiential education tools.
Yes.
And our young people, I'm so worried about them because of what's happening in the world today. Unemployment is an all-time high for ages 18 to 24. And yet, a recent Schwab survey said that kids in high school still think they're going to get out and make $75,000 in their first job. And so there's a real dichotomy between what their expectation is and what reality is. And so what happens when kids have a lot of idle time? Not much good. So it was really important for me to create something that helps young people learn the essence of life, the things that they're going to be faced with. And so Thrive Time for Teens was created, and it's got a lot of humor and fun. And we actually won the same Mom Gold Choice Award in 2010 for the game Thrive Time.
Award-winning.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's a huge honor. But the better honor is when kids, you see the lights come on.
Yeah.
And it shows that the bottom line is not so much about money. It's about choices. And I know you agree with this because of your life's work. And the sooner a young person understands that their choices dictate whether they thrive or whether they dive into debt, it's pretty simple. You know, if the world would just spend less than they earn, I'd be out of business and that would be okay. You know, it's kind of a simple concept.
Yes.
Spend less than you earn. Unfortunately, the world, we haven't quite gotten that, particularly Washington, we haven't gotten that lesson yet. So the Thrive Time game has a lot of humor. It's things about that happen to them in their lives at that point in time. It talks about having too many text messages on your phone. There's a card that you pull out that says you go to a great party at a friend's house. Their parents are out of town. Cops come. You get a $400 ticket. Now, the card doesn't have to say there was underage drinking. The kids fill in more than you want to know sometimes.
Yeah, they're probably more than drinking in some areas, right?
But they also have the opportunity to see the benefit of charity, the benefit of giving back, and it's all through experiential learning. When they start the game, it's like they have a part-time job. They make $350 a month. And so they are asked at the beginning of the game, do you want to give $50 a month to charity? Because if you do, then you'll get $300, but then you'll be a giver. And what charity do you want to give it to? 9 times out of 10, they want the extra $50. But then as they go through the game, they'll pull a card that says, you meet a woman at a charity function who wants you to be your partner. You'll earn an extra $150 a month helping her with her real estate. And then it says, only if you are a giver. And so they learn through experience that there are other things in life and other benefits than just getting more money if you are charitable and giving back and making the world a better place. And that's and we talk about having good grades, your car insurance goes down, talks about your first car, talks about leaving home, talks about college, student loans, which of course is a huge issue today.
My kids.
And so all of these issues, they're facing them, and they're making decisions in a safe, controlled environment with play money.
Yes, and they can fail and learn from failing.
And so as I tell parents, it's so important that our kids learn to stub their toe while they're still at home, so they don't break their leg when they leave home.
Right.
And of course, with my own son's experience, that's where my passion comes from. We talk about, people say, well, you know, passion is do what you love what you do. Well, sometimes passion comes from anger, and that's where mine came from. Anger that we weren't teaching our kids about money. Anger that we're not teaching entrepreneurship. We're teaching people to be dependent as employees instead of independent. Yes. You know, it's no problem. I mean, I love employees, and there's nothing wrong with being an employee. The problem is your own personal bank account, your own balance sheet is your business. And so again, I'll repeat myself, it's not what you do for the money, it's what you do with your paycheck.
And you phrase it in terms of being CEO of your own life too, right?
Yes, it's so important. And these kids, when they play this game, they realize that they are responsible for the choices they make. And it helps get past that victim mentality that we see so much, and that entitlement mentality that is very prevalent. In fact, today I say we've kind of blown through entitlement into a new reality of expectation. These kids don't think they're entitled, they know they're entitled, and they just expect it, just give it to me. So,
yeah, and to shift gears, you have another book, the 3 Feet from Gold book, right?
Yes, well, and when I left the Rich Dad organization, I had already gotten to know the folks at the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and as soon as they knew that I had left Rich Dad, they said, Sharon, we need you. they had started a project called 3 Feet from Gold, and with my co-author Greg Reed on this project. And what they did was, as we all know, the market tanked at the end of 2007, and the foundation said, Think and Grow Rich was such a powerful tool, and many successful business owners today credit their success to having read Think and Grow Rich. And it came out during the Great Depression. And so here we are again in the same situation we were back then, and we need to get this information back out. And yet, today, many people under the age of 50 didn't know who Napoleon Hill is. And so my charge and my honor, my tremendous honor, was the foundation asked me to help them, to join arms with them, to bring back the wisdom of Napoleon Hill to today's generations, and to make sure that we let people understand that they are the captains of their own destinies. And it's such an important message. And so what we did through 3 Feet from Gold is we talked to 35 of today's top leaders. We talked to them not just about their success stories, but about those deep, dark moments, those moments when other people would give up. And in fact, the title, 3 Feet from Gold, comes from a story in the first chapter of Think and Grow Rich, which you may remember. A young man named R.U. Darby goes out west to discover his fortune in gold with his uncle. They get their mine, they buy their equipment, and they discover gold. Yay, right? They get all excited. They tell everybody back home, we're going to be billionaires. And they go and they start digging, and all of a sudden they ran out of gold. They kept digging up dirt, more dirt, more dirt. And finally, they just got frustrated and threw up their hands and sold the mine and the equipment to the town junk man and went back east to Maryland. Well, the junk man had been there for 20 years studying gold mining. And he knew all the right people. He had the right associations. He had the engineers, the gold mining engineers. He goes out to the mine, and the engineer says, this is really quite simple. They just punched right through the vein of gold. You go back to where they started and go 3 feet in the other direction, and you'll tie back into it. And that's exactly what he did. He went on to discover the largest gold discovery of his time because of following the advice of the experts. Well, R.U. Darby back east hears about it, and he was pretty upset. But he also said, I will not allow this failure to define me. And he went on to build a huge insurance company. And he started teaching classes and started teaching people, mentoring people about perseverance and never giving up. So many people, and particularly today, so many people give up right before they're going to see success. They just don't have that extra oomph to get across. And so when we talk to these people, the folks today, it was because we wanted today's generation to recognize the stories. So it's Chick-fil-A restaurant founder, it's the FedEx founder, it's UPS stores, brands. You might not know their individual names, but you recognize the brands. And they may not have existed if they'd given up. Can you imagine a world without Velcro, right? I can't.
Well, this is a great segue, because in this book, especially in the first chapter, he talks about Napoleon Hill talks about his own entrepreneurial efforts, and some of them are successful, but he doesn't feel connected to it. And then he gets into this really bad funk. And then tell us about how, he calls it the other self, right? Tell us about that.
Well, the manuscript he wrote the year after he published Think and Grow Rich. That was published in 1937. And he was frustrated because his own life had been a series of ups and downs. And he said, even though people know what they're supposed to do to be successful, and I can feel this one, is a mirror, they're still not going to do it because of those self-limiting beliefs, those boxes that we put around ourselves. And so he said, I want to blast through those self-limiting beliefs. And that's what drew him to writing Outwitting the Devil. Again, it was drawn on that same experience of a lifetime of study. Well, the title alone scared his wife to death.
Absolutely.
She was working for the Methodist Church. And so it's like, I'm not so sure. I need my job, right? And so the book was really buried. She made him promise not to publish it. And he died in 1970. She died in 1984, but her sister just died a few years ago, and the manuscript had been hidden for 73 years. And her husband, who's now the chairman of the foundation, gave the manuscript to the foundation. And actually, the month we released 3 Feet from Gold was when the foundation got the manuscript, and they sent it to me and said, Sharon, we're not quite sure what to do with this. What do you think? And I probably was only the 5th person ever to read it. And I'm
That's
looking at it
amazing.
going, this is kind of a hot potato. I'm not sure. I mean, and besides, he's not around for me to talk to. I want to make sure I value what he's written. And so I read it in one night, and a tremendous sense of calm came over me. My daughter, who's a minister, said, Mom, I need to pray over you. But I read the manuscript, and it was so life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is. He shares at the very beginning, as you say, his own failures. Most of us, I read Think, Grow Rich when I was 19. I, all my life, thought of Napoleon Hill as this great author, this great
I did too.
philosopher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, in the beginning of Outwitting the Devil, he shares that he's just a man, and he had successes and failures along the way. He shares a time when he came home and his kids were crying in the window because the neighbors were putting up a Christmas tree, and he had no money to buy them gifts or a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And then he shares a time when he was afraid for his own life. The mafia was out, and he was hiding for over a year. These are things I didn't know about him.
Yeah, I didn't either.
And he shares that, and so he endears the reader. And then he has an epiphany one night.
Mm-hmm. He does that walk around West Virginia till he
The school building, yes.
Yes.
And he just says, I'm not going to go back home until I figure this out. And he has an epiphany. And it's an interrogation of the devil. If you remember the movie A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson,
Right.
you can't handle the truth. Well, that's my vision of what this interrogation of the devil was, where he says, you must tell me the truth. You must tell me how you get in people's way and how you control people's lives. And then he talks to the reader in the manuscript. He says, it's up to you whether you want this to be the real devil or an imaginary devil. It's up for you, the reader. The question is, will you find value in what you're reading?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very kind of in your face. And it's like, okay, well, you keep reading it, and it unveils, he takes on every taboo of his time. You know why his wife didn't want it to come out.
Oh,
He
yeah,
took on
well.
sex, religion, politics, alcohol, cigarettes, the education system, all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, he takes on everything. It's like, oh, this is an interesting cocktail conversation. And about how fear is the number one tool of the devil. Well, certainly what's happening in the world today, we are all surrounded by negativity. We're all surrounded by fear. He talks about the fear of criticism, which is huge.
Absolutely. I feel it myself, and I know all the people that I deal with have fear of criticism, and it keeps you small. It keeps you from taking steps because you're not sure how it'll be received. And then, so it's absolutely huge.
And that fear makes you implode, makes you
right.
become insulated. And by doing that, you lose opportunities. You don't recognize them because you're closing yourself down. He talks about the fear of poverty. Well, today we've got the combination of fear of criticism and fear of poverty is very debilitating.
Yes.
Debilitating. So many people today are sitting on the sidelines, frozen in fear. They've been downsized, outsized, right-sized, whatever. They don't know what to do. And this is a great, powerful tool. I mean, I myself, as I said, you mentioned I've been involved in a lot of very successful books, and it's a great honor to me. But I will say, out of the 17 books I've been involved in, this has been the most powerful for me personally. I've lost 40 pounds because I had to get my mind straight. We talk about habits, and it's like I could always put off the diet, but it was a frame of mind that had to change, not the diet.
And that's true in any kind of coaching or self-change or self-improvement. It's your change of mind that happens before the change in behavior.
Yes.
And when people get that, it unleashes whole new potential. And so it's really great that this book does that. It kind of flips it around so that you see that you have choice.
Yes.
And
Goes back to the power of choice.
That's right.
Each and every one of us, we make decisions, and we need to own those decisions.
That's right.
And we live in a world today where we've got victim mentalities all around us.
Right.
So talk to us about, he uses the term drifters. And drifters are people who don't make choices. They allow other people to choose for them. And so talk to us about characteristics of drifters versus non-drifters.
One of my favorite parts of the manuscript is the fact that he compares a drifter versus a non-drifter. And if you imagine a drifter, somebody who doesn't really have a definite goal in life, they go with the flow, they're easily swayed, You know, they don't really have an opinion of their own. The victim mentality,
Mm-hmm.
and they, and all of us can find elements of a drifter in our own lives.
Oh, yeah.
We all have it. I mean, there was one area in the book where he talks about procrastination. It's like busted. And he says laziness plus indifference equals procrastination. And I'm going, you know, because I always said I work better under pressure. That's my excuse for procrastinating.
I need a deadline. I know, I get that.
But no, it's drifting. It's drifting. It's not having yourself focused on an ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm.
And we can all imagine our own lives, and yet we also can identify people in our lives, whether it be a child or a brother or a mother that is in that stage of drifting.
Mm-hmm.
Then he talks about the non-drifter, and that non-drifter is someone who has that definite purpose. And I try to relate it as like a zigzag fence. We all have issues that pull us off course, all of us. But if we know where our ultimate game plan is,
Mm-hmm.
what our ultimate goal is, we can correct
Mm-hmm.
to get back on course.
Mhm.
But if you don't have that, where do you go?
Yeah, it's like a North Star. If you're
Right.
headed for a North Star, you might take a swervy path to get there, but at least you're staying in the same direction.
That's right. And what happens is if you do have that vision of where you want to go, and you're on purpose, you also are open to opportunities along the way that might help get you there quicker because your eyes are open,
Yeah.
as opposed to someone who's in fear and just kind of like letting life bob you around. And that's what's happened so much today in the world. And I think the words that he shares in here about how to outwit the devil and how to outwit the fear in your life is so powerful.
Yeah, well, I noticed on Facebook that you have a daughter and two sons, and I also have a daughter and two sons. And so the effect on young people, I mean, that's what we all hope, that our children grow up to be healthy, happy, and very productive in the world. And so I can see how this book can really help them get more focus, show them the value of having a purpose. And so has that made a difference in your life with your kids? I know it's made a difference in my life with my kids.
Well, absolutely. This particular book, Outwitting the Devil, you know, my passion is Gen Y because there are 77 million of them. It's a great business opportunity, and is a huge generation of young people who know what they don't like the status quo. And so we need to give them the tools to succeed. We need to allow them to be CEOs of their own lives. And they love Outwitting the Devil. They love the fact that it's a little edgy, that it's a little provocative.
And it's irreverent and makes fun of society and blah,
yes. And they actually, it's their pathway to Think and Grow Rich. So instead of reading Think and Grow Rich first, they're reading Outwitting the Devil, and then that's opening their mind to Think and Grow Rich. So it's kind of like a generational reversal of reading the two books. But it really, that's been the best thing about this project, is the fact that I see the impact that it's making. I was with a group of under 30 CEOs Tuesday night, 175 of them on top of the Empire State Building. And just, I mean, it just gives you hope for the future when you see that many young people that are destined, they are determined to be successful. And you know that there's hope for the future.
Yes, yes. So I think people would like to know just what you did with the manuscript. Did you edit it? Was there a lot that you took out? How did you make those choices? And then you annotated it, and how did you make choices about how to annotate it? Tell us a little bit about that process.
Sure. Well, when they first sent me the manuscript, it was about this big, about 400 pages of manually typed pages. And if you know Napoleon Hill well, you know that he's kind of wordy. And so the book itself, his words have not been changed. I did what I call some precision editing. I took out some stuff that was really no longer relevant in today's world, that might have been too dated based on what was happening in 1938. You know, a lot of references to Hitler and Mussolini. There's still a few in there, but you know, I tried to make it so that it would be impactful for the world that we live in today. My comments are in separate typeface and set apart, so that if you're a Hill purist, you can read the book without my comments, or if you choose to, you can read it. And what I did was I draw parallels between 1938 and today, because when I first got the manuscript, I'm going, gosh, does this still relate to the world we have today? And then I looked at, well, high unemployment then, high unemployment now. Upside down economy then, upside down economy now. So yes, it was definitely the words are very much impactful today. And in fact, I believe it's even more powerful today than it would have been in 1938. So,
Yeah, I totally get that. And there's a lot of historical context there because you just referred to Hitler, Mussolini, and certainly we've had eras of McCarthyism and
Yes.
different kinds of eras in this 73 years where a lot of thinking hasn't gone on because it's been, think like the party thinks and not a whole lot of educational change, too.
and not a lot of free, independent thinking.
That's
And
right.
that's what the book is all about. It's all about taking control and being independent in your thought process. The devil says the only way to escape my web is to use your own brain. Kind of simple, right? But that's exactly right. Is to allow yourself. What I do a lot of in my seminars, I have people write down and describe themselves in one word. And invariably, out of 99 people, only one will write down their own name. Because we live in a society where we define ourselves through the eyes of others. And that's why the fear of criticism is so powerful today. I had the same experience myself. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm an author, I'm an entrepreneur. I never wrote down Sharon. And so this book helps you realize that I'm a better wife, I'm a better mother, I'm a better grandmother, I'm a better author when I take care of Sharon. And that's such an important thing, that we become independent and we do what's right for us. Then we'll be better in our roles as seen by others. And we'll be less fearful of criticism.
Yeah, he talks about fear and ignorance.
Yes.
And the ignorance part, all through my life, I've dealt with, free will versus determinism, and if a child is raised in a family that's very conservative, can the child change? And then we hear Oprah stories about how people raised in abusive families can change. And that's all that power of choice. And some people don't feel they have that choice. And
Right.
so, that's the inspirational part of this. And so, have you heard stories about people being inspired because of any of Napoleon Hill's books? Can you
Oh.
relate a few of those?
Oh, absolutely. I just 2 days ago, when I had this under 30 CEO, I had a young man come up to me, and he had read Rich Dad Poor Dad at the age of 12, which was fabulous. And he says,
Yes.
then he went on and he read Think and Grow Rich, and he's 21, and he's up making $500,000 a year in his own business.
Wow.
Because he said it had nothing to do with anything I read in school or learned in school. It's because I started thinking independently and followed the principles of Rich Dad Poor Dad and Think and Grow Rich. And I think it's so important that we understand that we give those opportunities. We awaken their mind to the possibilities. One of my analogies is, your car has a windshield, so you can see wherever you want to go. The choice is yours, where you want to go. And yet our rear view mirror is very small. And that's so that you only learn from your past. Take with you what is positive, what the learning opportunity is. Don't define yourself by the mistakes that you make. And it's so important that people understand that your life just begins today.
Yeah.
If you're not happy with, you are where you are today because of the choices you've made until today. And if you're not happy with where you are today, make different choices, and you'll go somewhere different. And that's, the world would be a whole lot better place if we would all be responsible for our own wallets and what we're doing in our own lives. And that's, in part of we were talking about the original manuscript, there's a section that I pulled out, and I actually have it online for free at outwittingthedevil.com. It's called The Secret Chapter. And because it wasn't related to the rest of the manuscript, but it's Napoleon Hill having a meeting with his invisible counselors, his mastermind, and he brings these people from history into this invisible counselor. And it's a great lesson to learn, because each and every one of us can learn from people in the past. We can learn from people in our own family. We can learn from people around us. But understand how those lessons apply to our own lives so that we can make the best decisions to move forward. And again, it's experiential learning. The power of a mastermind is that you're getting the benefit of all of their experience that are there to help you. the mistakes they've made, hopefully you won't make, because they're going to steer you away from duplicating their mistakes. And so that's where I say it's 1 + 1 = 11, not 2. You get the power of everybody's experience, and you get the ability to speed your way to success.
It's like standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I like to work with masterminds with the entrepreneurs that I teach, because they can use each other, they can use mentors, they can use people from their own industry or from other industries. In fact, I'm part of several mastermind groups, and the reason this happened today is because I have mastermind groups that said yes when I said I want to put together an event in a week, and there were mastermind groups who helped me do that.
Wonderful.
So that we could all pull it together and take advantage of the fact that you were available here.
You're walking the talk.
Absolutely. And so are you.
And that's the power. When we did 3 Feet from Gold, the formula we came up with a personal success equation. And the personal success equation is taking your passion, and for me, my passion is the lack of financial literacy, combining it with your talent. Now, for me, it's the fact that I'm a CPA and I have a background in publishing. So I combine my passion and my talent, but that's not enough. Then you have to say, you multiply that by your associations, the power of your associations. If you're stuck in life, first thing you need to look at is who you're hanging out with.
Yeah, you're the average of the 3 people you spend the most time with.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So it's a passion, talent, and take the right association, and then take action. So many people, we've all seen, people think and grow rich means you just think good things and good things will happen.
No, you have to have the action.
One of the very big pieces with Napoleon Hill was go the extra mile.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely you're supposed to actually take action. So it's your passion, your talent, times the right association, times taking the right action. And we almost went to press with the book, with that equation. But I said, there's still something missing, and all of the people that we interviewed had something else. Overriding everything else, they had faith. They had faith in themselves. They had faith in what they were doing, and they had faith that they would succeed. And that's really the essence of what carried them through when other people stop, other people quit. Because so many of us were, and a lot of times it's our own family.
Absolutely.
We're on a path, or we decide to change something in our lives, and our family goes, oh, she's changing, no.
Because that disrupts them,
fail.
right?
Yes.
Or with friends, you've got a certain lifestyle going, and you're with your friends, and you decide to take a slightly different path, and the friends don't get it. Well, maybe you need some new friends.
Yeah. Right. And what happens is they're going to start seeing you successful, and they're going to come right back.
Yes.
And they're going to be your biggest cheerleaders. But that initial transition time, they're going to pull you back. And I'm sure you've probably heard the analogy of you put a crab in a box and it crawls right out. You put 2 crabs in a box, neither one of them gets out. They pull each other down. And so what happens is when we are in our circle of friends and we do something different, if they're not doing something different, they actually get fearful because they're not changing and you are.
Right.
And so that reticence, and I say, you can't necessarily change your family, but you can minimize the time you spend with your family and make sure you surround yourself in a mastermind with people who are excited about what you're doing and will speed you along the way. Mentorship is so important today, and getting that group of people around you to help move in the right direction.
In fact, in my case, I look at it as a disservice. If I'm not modeling what I want my children to do, then I'm not allowing them to fulfill their potential. And sometimes they're doing more than I am, and I'm looking at them as models. So, we all help each other with that. And it's great that you brought up the whole faith thing, because that's the opposite of the fear, and the fear is what's the basis of this book, right?
Absolutely. And when he talks about religion in the book, he doesn't take on any one religious institution. He kind of takes them all on. He says, and I like to describe it because I was raised in the Southern Baptist religion. And I was guilt queen. I mean, I still remember the minister when I was 15 who told me I was going to go to hell. But I also, in that same church, I had a youth minister that made me feel like I could be and do anything I wanted to do. Same religion. It was just one was teaching me religion through faith. The other one was teaching me religion through fear. And when you can analyze that, when you can actually look at it, I was like, okay, that's a man issue. That's not a faith issue. That's the teacher's issue. That's not faith.
That's
and
their
my
baggage.
faith, yes, my faith comes from being uplifted and believing that I can do and succeed in anything I try. But yet so many of our children, and when we talk about education, it's a very powerful section of the book and absolutely aligns with my belief and what I do with all my products from an experiential. This is 1938 now, and he says, we have to stop drilling facts and memorization into our kids. You think? You think? Maybe we should have had this in 1938.
Yeah.
He says it's time we stop making them memorize and we start creating problem solvers. It's time for teachers not to be dictators, but to be mentors and be cheerleaders and allow children. The root word of education, educati, actually means to draw out, not drill in.
Yeah. I always find that it's so much more effective to ask questions than it is to give answers, because it gets people to think for themselves, and they develop their own power, their own choice, and their own ability to believe in themselves.
Couldn't agree with you more. I often tell people, particularly parents, we tend to be very quick to say, I can't afford something. Okay? And when you say that, it's negative and it's a statement. And so you can imagine your brain just shuts down. I can't afford it. Or with your kids, we can't afford it. And I say, stop a moment. And instead of saying, I can't afford it, just switch it to a question. How can we afford it?
Right.
When you have that question, you open the brain. The brain wants to answer the question.
That's right.
And
we'll
so by
start looking
saying,
for
how
ways.
can we afford it, you actually ignite the entrepreneurial spirit in yourself and more importantly in your children. Because all of a sudden they get really creative, and that creative thinking and that problem solving is what's missing so much in our young people today.
And testament to that, I remember sitting around the table with my kids, and I had a business, an IT type business, and we would talk marketing talk at the table, and they would give out all kinds of suggestions, and we had, family discussions, and they actually ran some programs for me. So it really does encourage people to be entrepreneurs and to think and to get outside of, the limited thinking that so much of society and education does impose on people.
That's the beauty of businesses today, because so many can be internet-based, they can be home-based, that you really truly can involve your children in your business so that they can see it. What happens, and this is what happened in my own life with my son, I was devastated. He was with me when I used my credit cards. He wasn't with me when I paid them off. And then I started realizing that our children are with us when we spend money. They're not with us when we work hard to make it. And they're not necessarily with us most of the time when we're paying our bills.
No, you usually do pay the bills after the kids go to bed, right?
Right. So they're only seeing the spending part of life. So, of course, that's what they become accustomed to. And, of course, they're bombarded with advertising. And now with the internet on their, right there in their face on their text messaging. So it's so important that we involve our kids in the complete picture of the economic world and how you make money and be able to afford the things that you want, and as opposed to just thinking that money grows on trees.
Absolutely.
And you're the tree. I often ask mothers, I said, do you feel like you have ATM tattooed across your forehead?
Yes.
Because they're with you when you spend money, and you're, every toy store, they want something. They don't want you to leave without something. And it's, the issue is teaching them the value.
So they can make good choices.
Yes.
Yes.
Back to choices.
Back to choices. One of the things that when my kids went to college, I wanted them to be poor, poor college student, because I wanted them to experience what it was to live poorly so they'd never be afraid of it again. So sometimes when you do that, you eliminate the fear because it's happened.
Yeah, because they survive it. They
That's
get
right.
through it. Yeah, and so many people today, I talk to parents, we want to put our kids in bubbles. We don't want them to fail. We have a everybody wins philosophy, and is it really the best thing we can do for our kids? And that's what in our world of affluence, many of our kids have never experienced poverty, and so for the first time, they're now seeing parents losing their homes, or they themselves are in financial trouble, And so it's a first-time experience, and they don't know how to deal with it because they've never had to deal with adversity or failure before. And that's what we have to power through and get them the tools that they can to succeed. Because I use the science fair as an example. You know, when my kids had their 4th grade science fair, you could walk in and you could tell which ones the parents had helped with.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, okay, mom and dad did that one and that one. And of course, as parents, you think, I'm such a great parent. I look at, you know, I helped my child. And you think your child thinks you're fabulous too, but maybe your child is saying, Mom didn't think I could do it on my own. And then the next time around, why bother? Mom will do it. So in essence, instead of helping your child, by helping, you're actually disabling. And you're showing them a lack of confidence. And that a lot of kids today, they have no self-esteem because they haven't set goals and achieved them. And so I tell parents, have them start with little wins. I have my little wins philosophy is, you let them set a small goal, achieve it, and celebrate. And let them set another one. And each time they achieve a goal, you start seeing that self-esteem rise. When I was a kid, we didn't have credit cards. So if I wanted something, I had to work for it and pay for it. And just that process gave me self-esteem. Today, it's just charge it, Mom. Just charge it. And so they're not going through that process of that delayed gratification. And so if we can allow our kids to start setting small goals and achieving them, and not just kids, all of us grown-ups too, that are kind of sitting on the
And
sidelines.
those entrepreneurs that we deal with.
Yes, little goals. Make a little goal, and then celebrate the fact that you've achieved it.
Yeah, well, that's very empowering to be able to set a goal, achieve it, and celebrate and internalize that celebration because you did it, and that sense of power and pride.
Yeah, and you want that long-term goal.
That's right.
But if you have the little ones, all of a sudden you're going to wake up and you're going to be a whole lot closer to the big one.
Yeah.
But you've celebrated along the way.
Yeah, and it's great to have that sense of purpose for your life, and then to say, well, what's my 5-year goal within that life purpose? And then what's my 1-year mission inside that 5-year vision of myself? And then start to set goals that are immediate and achievable. And it does great things for time management because all you're doing, everything is aligned. And it's just a great way to live your life. I think we've run out of time. This has been such a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. I really have appreciated the opportunity, and you've got some great friends.
Yeah, well, thank you. This has been an honor and a privilege, and I'm so glad that you were able to come today and we were able to get it together on a last-minute basis, but it's been a great conversation.
Well, thank you, and I applaud you for all you're doing in your business and helping others and providing this kind of information. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you.
Yeah, my purpose and my passion is to help entrepreneurs and people in the professional services world to grow great companies and be inspired leaders. And so if I can bring somebody as expert as Sharon here to bring the message of empowerment, then I feel I'm helping people stand up for themselves and all that they can be. So thank you so much. And Sharon, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. My pleasure.